Welcome to Case Files of the Geek Gumshoe. I'm the Geek Gumshoe. This case file comes to us from the forests of Arizona, where on November 5th of 1975, an event occurred that had great impact on the shape of popular culture's views on UFO and alien abduction. It's a much debated story that some say is a hoax and others say is impossible to debunk. Some people aren't paying attention. According to the story that's been told for some 40 years now, Travis Walton and a crew of 6 other loggers were traveling on a logging road when they observed a saucer-shaped craft floating in the trees nearby. Travis got out of the truck and approached it. After a bright light from the craft knocked him unconscious, the others drove away and left him there. Sounds like somebody needs some new friends. The co-workers reported the incident to the police, and Travis was found 5 days later wandering down a highway. He told authorities a story about being taken aboard a ship to a hospital-like room where he fought against the alien abductors until a human wearing a helmet intervened. During the 5 days that Travis was missing, his co-workers were interviewed by the police, who believed that those men had murdered him. Guess that's what you get for leaving your buddy in the woods. If this was a hoax, this is where I have to credit the men for standing by their story. 5 days of being accused of homicide would break most people. We have to consider a few possibilities when evaluating what actually happened that night. There are 3 possible scenarios of exactly what went down. One is that the events happened pretty much as they were described, and that Travis was abducted by aliens and experimented on a spaceship for 5 days. 2, the whole thing was completely made up by everybody in the truck. Or 3, there was a staged incident that involved 2 or more people in that vehicle. Now, the general public since 1975 has ignored several red flags that this whole thing may have been a hoax perpetrated by Travis and at least one other person in that truck. Now, I don't necessarily have to believe that everyone in the truck was involved just to pull off a hoax, because this kind of thing is much more effective if you have a few unsuspecting witnesses involved. I mean, why involve more people in the planning than necessary? And a witness who isn't in on the scam is the best kind of witness. Some of these red flags include: the abduction occurred about 2 weeks after the airing of a very popular program called The UFO Incident. It was the story of Betty and Barney Hill and their abduction by aliens, and starred the great James Earl Jones. And Travis's story is not that dissimilar to the events of that program. Another thing was that the abduction occurred right before the deadline for a logging contract that Travis and his men were not going to be able to finish. Also, there are inconsistencies in the stories told by all of the men that were questioned. Now, that's not unusual, even in a case where everybody's telling the truth, but it's the nature of the inconsistencies that we have to evaluate when we're looking at this. Also, during a media interview, Travis's brother made a really unusual statement. He said, "He's not even missing. He knows where he's at. I know where he's at." Funny that nobody really followed up on that. Soon after the incident, Travis and his co-workers were awarded $5,000 by National Enquirer for the best UFO story of the year. Now, by today's standards, that would be a prize of about 25 grand. That's a pretty good payout for hiding in the woods for 5 days. Now, everybody involved was given a polygraph test. Travis failed his first one, but then he was given another and he passed. All of the other men passed, with the exception of one whose test was ruled as inconclusive. Those polygraph tests were later criticized by other experts and determined to be shady at best. One examiner even went so far as to claim gross deception on the part of Travis and to exclaim that he was clearly using countermeasures to beat the test. Another examiner said that Travis, who always seems willing to take another lie detector test, has gone so far as to send a list of pre-approved questions before any test can take place. The fact is that a polygraph is an imperfect tool. Depending on the questions that are asked, deception can be hard to detect. The answer often comes down to the perception of the person being questioned. Maybe they participated in one aspect of a crime, but not another, and the question doesn't address both. It's easy for the person to separate their involvement from the question that's being asked. 3 years after the incident, Travis wrote a book, which eventually became a movie called Fire in the Sky. And we're going to show a little clip from that movie here. Check this out. Hold up just a second. I don't think that's the right clip. What do you mean we can't afford the right clip? Pay? Who do we have to pay? Travis Walton. course. Okay. All right, so here's a clip from the movie. All right, here's the part where Travis gets abducted. And here's the part where he's fighting with the aliens to get away.
Your stupid minds. Stupid. Stupid. That's all I'm taking from you. Get back here, you jerk!
Clearly, they spared no expense making this movie. Now, Travis has made an industry out of this event between his TV appearances and movies and his writings, but he also runs a convention during which he takes people on guided tours to the site of the abduction. All of this creating a stream of income based on his experience. Back in the early 2000s, Travis was on a TV game show called The Moment of Truth, in which contestants were asked a series of questions, and each correct answer earned them a certain amount of money. And the end goal was to get to a $100,000 question. Now, at any point of the show, they could take the money they had earned so far and leave. Or they could answer another question, but a false answer meant they would lose everything they had. Now, Travis submitted to the show's polygrapher, and the final question he was asked, were you abducted by aliens? And he answered yes. The polygraph determined that that was a lie on national television. Then he made it worse by turning around and making a public statement that the only reason he agreed to do the show was that they agreed to bend the rules so that he would be awarded more prizes. You notice that he didn't say, I did the show because I wanted the truth to be out there. This statement was the equivalent of saying, I only agreed to do it because they told me it was going to be rigged in my favor. And yet to this day, people still believe that Travis Walton was abducted by aliens in 1975. Now recently, one of the men involved, Mike Rogers, the driver of the truck on the night of this incident, has started becoming more vocal about the incident after finding out that Travis is secretly working on a remake of the film without involving any of the other workers. No doubt to keep more of the royalties for himself. Rogers has been making statements on social media calling Travis a liar and coming just short of saying that the incident never happened. He's made comments that include phrases like Walton's supposed abduction, or so maybe the abduction did happen, maybe it didn't, and maybe it's a still steaming pile of manure. He also threatens to get more truthful after Travis made some derogatory statements on Rogers' social media page. It seems like Travis Walton, in his selfish attempt at new financial gain, has forgotten that old adage that 3 can keep a secret if 2 are dead. The weak link in any hoax is the number of people that it took to pull it off. And you have to continually keep those people happy if you want that charade to continue. The overwhelming evidence in this case says that it never happened. And it was just an elaborate hoax to cash in on some prize money. Then it grew bigger than anyone ever imagined, and those involved knew they couldn't be honest about it without facing charges for fraud. Over time, it became part of their lives, an occasion to make a buck every once in a while. But in the coming weeks, we could see a full reveal regarding the truth in this case. The statute of limitations for anything criminal is long gone, but book and film royalties are still in play. A few more angry outbursts and this house of cards is going to come tumbling down. This one is worth keeping an eye on. What do you think of Travis Walton's story? Is it a hoax or is it the truth? Leave a comment down below and tell me about it. If you have video you'd like me to evaluate, or if there's a story I need to turn my eye to, tell me about it here or email me at geek.gumshoe@gmail.com. And until the next case brings our paths together again, keep your mind and eyes open, but don't be an easy mark. Geek Gumshoe, over and out.